So now the first thing that we're going to talk about is plasma membrane, as you can see on the screen, right? So what is the plasma membrane? So students, first observe this animation that is happening on the screen. What is exactly happening? You could see there is some substance or some material over here, right? And then say this is a cell, right? And then the red periphery or the lining that you could see, that is the plasma membrane. Okay, so now what is happening here? You could see that the material that is there lying outside is taken in. So you could see invagination, or a kind of, just like in amoeba, you have seen that it engulfs any foreign material and it takes in, it forms a vacuole and then it takes in, right? So in the same way, this plasma membrane, it has developed that invagination, like that pore like thing, and then it's engulfing the substance that is lying outside, and then it will form a vacuole and it will take in, like you can see in the animation. That thing is called as endocytosis. We will be talking about this term. This is one of the function of a plasma membrane. It's capable of doing endocytosis. Endo means inside, cytosis, taking in, engulfing something by making the boundary, in such a way, in such a shape that it can very well receive the outer substance, and then it just forms a vacuole and then it takes in. That's how it works. So let us talk more about the plasma membrane and how exactly it works, right? So we are talking about plasma membrane here. What is plasma membrane? So, well, plasma membrane is the outermost delicate elastic membranous covering of the cell that separates its content from the external environment. That is called as plasma membrane. What is plasma membrane? It is the outermost delicate elastic membranous covering of the cell that separates its content from the external environment, right? So now you know what is the function in general sense, right? Now how exactly a plasma membrane works? Let us see. Now plasma membrane is known to be partial. What does that mean? Plasma membrane is known to be selectively permeable or selectively partial. Okay, it means it doesn't allow every single thing to enter inside it. It doesn't allow every single substance to enter inside it. It just is very partial. It will only allow few of the components inside the cell. That thing is called as selectively permeable. So plasma membrane is selectively permeable. It allows the entry of just some substances or certain substances, restricting the others. It won't allow, say there are 100 things wanting to get in the cell. No, it's not going to allow that. It will just take 10 of them. It's partial. It is selectively permeable. Permeable means allowing the permeability. That's permeable is that permeability, right? Who can enter. Selectively permeable meaning it is selecting who can enter. So it means selectively permeable. So plasma membrane is selectively permeable. It allows the entry of certain substances, restricting the entry of others. What does it look like? Like how does it look like? We don't know, right? And then what is it made up of? So it's made up of 2 layers of lipids and proteins, and we call that a plasma membrane is made up of a bilipid layer and proteins are integrated inside. So imagine there is a bed or bed surface or a mattress. Say that's your plasma membrane's periphery, okay, and that is made up of 2 layers, just like a sandwich. You have 2 slices of bread in the same way. So that's a bilayer. two slices of your bread is a bilayer. So this is first layer, this is second layer, right? So this is how it's made up of. And then inside, embedded, you see, say this pen is embedded in the, in between these two slices. Say these are the two layers, right? This is first layer, this is the second layer, and the pen is embedded. So imagine these are the two layers that are made up of lipid, and then the pen that you can see is acting as a protein. So this is the setup, this is how it's designed. So it's made up of a bilipid layer, and proteins are integrated inside it, scattered and integrated inside it. So you could see the diagram that's there in front of you, right? So you could see these are basically the integrated proteins, and then I'd show you the lipid bilayer. See, could you see those head-like structures are over here? These are the head-like structures, and then again you could see the head-like structures below at the bottom, right? And in the middle you could see, say this one is one individual with the head and the tail, this is another individual with the head and the tail, right? So this individual, the head is up, the tail is inside. This individual, the head is outside and the tail is inside. So the tails of both the layers are meeting inside, and the heads of both the layers, they are outside, right? So this head and tail is one layer, and this head and tail is another layer. And then you could see here the bluish things, these globules or these items or substances over here. These are the proteins that are integrated in between, and that is making your plasma membrane. Also, apart from that, small carbohydrates are attached at places are placed to the outer surface of lipid and protein as well. So you could see there are tiny structures over here. So apart from your lipid bilayer, it has got integrated proteins, and apart from that, you also have got small carbohydrates as well, which are attached at places to outer surface of the lipid and protein. Now talking about the function of plasma membrane. So what exactly it does? We know that a plasma membrane is that basic covering of the cell. You know that it is selectively permeable. You know that it's made up of lipid bilayer and integrated proteins, and then there are some carbohydrates as well. And then what is the function exactly? So well, it gives the cell its shape. So it provides shape to the contents of the cell. Plasma membrane is not only present at the periphery, just not only making the outline of the cell, it's present inside as well. So plasma membrane is also surrounding the organelles, the components of the cell as well. Okay, so plasma membrane is making the cell shape. Also plasma membrane is giving the shape to the contents of the cell as well. So it's basically providing the shape or that skeletal structure. Also, plasma membrane acts as a mechanical barrier. It doesn't allow everything to enter, so it acts as a mechanical barrier. And then we already know that it is semi-permeable. This term semi-permeable is synonymous to selectively permeable. Semi-permeable and selectively permeable is one and the same thing. This is in the nature of plasma membrane that it doesn't allow every single thing to enter inside. It's very, very partial, and it just allows few of the things to enter in it. That means it is selectively permeable. It is semi-permeable. And then, at the start, when we had observed that small animation that had showed you, wherein the membrane or the periphery of the cell, that cell boundary was making an invagination, and then the substance entered into that, and then a vacuole was developed and it was taken inside, and that very thing was called as endocytosis. So endocytosis is also a characteristic feature of the plasma membrane. This is counted in the function of plasma membrane, that plasma membrane does do endocytosis. It does take in the substances from outside into the cell, in the inside of the cell. that, plasma membrane also acts as a recognition center. It acts as recognition centers for various substances outside the cell, right? It has got that composition that makes it a recognition center as well. So different compounds or different enzymes, can recognize, or different organisms, maybe some other cells, can recognize a cell by its plasma membrane, because plasma membrane becomes the recognition center as well. Now, next thing is plasma membrane. They are responsible for the flow of information. Flow of information, flow of substances. You know how I'm trying to say this. Flow of information is like maybe a amino acid, is a protein, is flowing. You know how things work. So a gene is there which will make a protein, right? And then the protein will either function or make the structure of the cell or the body or the organism, right? So plasma membrane, they are also responsible for flow of information as well. And the next thing is that plasma membrane, they are responsible for osmosis. Shortly we'll be talking about osmosis thing. Osmosis is a type of diffusion. Osmosis is wherein there is movement of a water molecule across a gradient, across a concentration gradient. The substance will move from the area of higher concentration towards the area of lower concentration. That is osmosis. Osmosis happens with the water molecule. The movement of the water molecule across a concentration gradient from a higher concentration to a lower concentration. I could give you an example of osmosis by, you take a tumbler, you take a glass full of water, okay, and then you just put a drop full of ink in there, and that soon you'll be able to see that that drop of ink will diffuse all through the water, and now that drop you cannot find, but that entire water is colorful. So that is an example of osmosis. Osmosis generally happens within a semipermeable membrane. And what is a semipermeable membrane? That is a plasma membrane. That is a semipermeable membrane. So osmosis, so plasma membrane is responsible for osmosis. Okay, osmosis happens across a semipermeable membrane, the movement of water molecule across a semipermeable membrane across the concentration gradient. Plasma membrane is also responsible for cell continuity, meaning the cell to continue, it requires plasma membrane. Apart from that, it also does some additional things also for the cell, like plasma membrane is modified in such a way that it can perform special functions like absorption in the microvilli. So plasma membrane is modified to perform special functions like absorption in the microvilli as well. So that was all about plasma membrane. So what did we learn in this class? We talked about all the different functions that plasma membrane shows in a cell.